Before you listen, if you enjoy the stories and want to hear more, then please consider subscribing. Most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please take this time to subscribe. Turn on notifications so you'll never miss a story and be the first to hear. You'll also be supporting me. Thank you. I was in a vulnerable place when I downloaded Swipe Right. Fresh off a bad breakup that had completely shattered my self-esteem, I figured chatting with some new guys online would be a harmless confidence boost. And at first it was. The few pleasant conversations won my spirits and reminded me that I could still be desirable, despite how worthless my ex made me feel. That all changed when I matched with Brad. His profile immediately caught my eye. Clean-cut, successful finance guy who loved the outdoors and sports. Basically everything I looked for on paper. His photos showed sparkling green eyes that pulled me in and a warm, genuine smile. When he messaged me first, I felt a little rush of excitement. I tried to play it cool, but couldn't resist showing my enthusiasm in my responses. We just seemed to get each other instantly. The witty banter flowed effortlessly all day long through the app. I'd send a response, anticipating an hour wait or so until his next message. But he always fired back right away, no games. We dove deep fast, analyzing past relationships, childhood wounds, secret dreams, and fears, not the usual small talk fluff I was used to with matches. It felt startlingly intimate for two strangers. I started looking forward to waking up early and chatting with Brad first thing. His sweet good morning beautiful message never failed to make me smile. He gave me his undivided attention, really listening, validating my feelings and lifting me up. I soaked it in eagerly like a flower starved for sunlight after a long, harsh winter. It filled an aching need for connection in me after months of feeling worthless and unlovable. Of course, I can see now that I got dangerously addicted to the intoxicating high of Brad's constant affection and validation. But back then, I was blind to the glaring red flags. The way we became so intensely emotionally dependent on each other within days should have been alarming. But I craved that soulmate-level connection in a way he seemed to truly know and understand me. I ignored the unease whispering that we were moving too fast. When Brad suggested spontaneously moving across the country together to Florida after only a week, I initially reeled in shock. A rational voice in my head screamed that was obviously premature given we hadn't even met yet. But I was terrified of losing this magical connection that made me feel whole again after being shattered for so long. So rather than running for the hills, I just politely declined and gave vague excuses why such a big step was too fast. Brad seemed very understanding at first and dropped the idea without fuss, but then his behavior took an abrupt turn. He started calling late at night already drunk, going on depressing rants about how I was too good for him and deserved better. Despite my pleas to open up, he refused to explain why he felt so unworthy all of a sudden. After nearly a week of this hot and cold act, the truth came pouring out one night between sobs. Brad admitted he was a drug dealer selling heroin and felt trapped living this dangerous double life. He wanted to leave it all behind for me, but feared his family could get seriously hurt if he tried escaping the business too quickly. I sat there in stunned silence as the reality set in. Brad had completely duped me with his charming romantic act. I felt like such an idiot looking back clearly at all the signs I had willfully ignored. The love bombing, the suffocating intensity, moving way too fast. All the red flags were in plain sight, but I was too spellbound to notice. In that moment, I knew I needed to remove this toxic person from my life entirely. As soon as I was alone, I immediately blocked Brad on everything without another word. I then spent the next few weeks actively working to replenish and take care of myself after this emotionally damaging fling. I focused on rebuilding my boundaries, self-worth, and independence that had been slowly eroded. I emerged on the other side wiser, with a much deeper understanding of the dangers of moving too quickly with online strangers. My story serves as a cautionary tale for others seeking love through dating apps. It's crucial to take things slow, watch carefully for any red flags, and not allow an intoxicating fantasy connection to blind you to reality. Falling for Brad's act so hard initially made me feel incredibly foolish, but in the end, it proved to be a valuable life lesson about protecting my heart and not ignoring warning signs. These days, I keep one eye open for any hints of love bombing, manipulation, or other toxic behavior when I match with someone new. I'm not proud that I was so easily fooled by Brad's charm, but getting played once allowed me to gain the knowledge and wisdom to never let it happen again. Now I stay grounded in reality instead of getting swept away by fantasy. While our brief connection was intoxicating, trying to make a life with someone like Brad would have destroyed me. As painful as that fling was, I emerged wiser and stronger, with renewed conviction about my self-worth. Fool me once, shame on you, Brad. Fool me twice. Well, that's just not ever going to happen again. As a single girl in my late 20s, I had ventured into the world of online dating like so many before me. After a string of lackluster relationships in my early 20s, I decided it was time to expand my dating pool beyond just coworkers and friends of friends. Modern technology had opened up a whole new way to connect with eligible bachelors. No longer were we limited to the guy sitting across from us at the coffee shop or the cutie chatting with us in line at the bookstore. An entire catalog of men was now at my fingertips through the multitude of dating apps and sites available online. With encouragement from a few married girlfriends who claimed they met their soulmate online, I uploaded my best photos, wrote a lighthearted profile, and put myself out there into the digital dating universe. I browsed the hundreds of men's profiles that popped up as potential matches, exchanged witty banter with a few interesting ones, and ultimately agreed to meet up with Chad for a first date. His profile showed a handsome, athletic blonde man who loved hiking, craft beer, and watching sports. We seemed to have enough in common, so I said yes when he asked me out to dinner. The day of the date arrived, and I spent no small amount of time getting ready, making sure my long brown hair fell in perfect beachy waves, and my makeup accentuated my best features. I chose a flirty floral dress to complement my petite frame and strappy heels to give me an extra boost of height. Feeling confident in my appearance, I drove downtown to meet Chad at the trendy restaurant he had picked out. I immediately recognized Chad from his pictures when I walked inside. He stood up to greet me with a broad grin, and I noticed he was even better looking in person. Over 6 feet tall with twinkling blue eyes, Chad had the kind of classic good looks that turned heads as we walked by. The hostess sat us at an intimate table near the back, and we spent the first part of the date engaging in the usual first date chit-chat. The conversation flowed easily between us while we waited for our meal. Chad came across as laid back and charming with a good sense of humor. So far, so good. Once our food arrived, Chad ordered us a bottle of red wine to share. I don't normally drink much on first dates, but thought one glass couldn't hurt. The wine turned out to be a particularly excellent vintage, and Chad enthusiastically refilled my glass several times. By the time our plates were cleared, I was certainly feeling a nice warm buzz from the alcohol. Chad suggested we get the molten lava cake for dessert, and I happily agreed. Chocolate cake sounded divine right about now. However, once the decadent dessert arrived at our table, Chad's previously relaxed demeanor suddenly changed. He got very quiet and reserved, slowly picking at his portion of cake with a melancholy look in his eyes. When I asked Chad if something was wrong, he despondently replied that molten lava cake had always been his ex-girlfriend Jessica's favorite. Jessica. This was the first I was hearing about an ex, and alarm started faintly sounding in my alcohol-tinged mind. As Chad spoke more, the details about Jessica emerged. They had only dated for 3 weeks before she broke things off, but Chad believed they had a deep connection. He became emotional thinking about her, his voice cracking, eyes glistening with building tears. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat as Chad delved further into this short-lived relationship, clueless to how inappropriate it was to cry about an ex on a first date. The gap between Chad's feelings and the actual length of time he had known Jessica was truly astonishing. By the time Chad uttered the fateful phrase, I really thought she was the one. Big salty tears were freely escaping down his cheeks. I sat there stunned, at a total loss for how to handle this sudden show of emotion from a near stranger. A box of tissues would have been useful right about then. Other diners began to take notice of Chad loudly sniffling and whimpering, making the entire situation painfully awkward. In an ill-conceived attempt to remedy his distress, Chad then asked if I would sleep with him to help get over his heartbreak. He pleadingly suggested going back to my place after dinner, thinking it with me would provide the perfect solace for his emotional turmoil. I'm sure my face displayed absolute horror and revulsion at this proposition. There was no way I would be intimate with someone who clearly had untreated emotional baggage with a woman he barely knew. Throwing some cash on the table, I hurriedly made my exit while Chad gazed after me with red-rimmed puppy dog eyes. I felt a twinge of guilt leaving him in such a blubbery state, but my self-preservation instincts kicked in. There was no reason for me to waste any more of my evening commiserating about Jessica with this guy who was quite obviously unhinged. I drove straight home, replaying the bewildering latter half of the date in my mind. Once home, I promptly deleted my dating app profile and blocked Chad's number. No more dates for me, online or otherwise, for the foreseeable future. Recounting the story to my friends the next day, they reacted with disbelief and unanimous confirmation that I'd had a lucky escape. For weeks afterwards, thoughts of the disastrous date with Chad popped up any time I considered giving online dating another go. His rapid emotional spiral served as a cautionary reminder that while technology makes it easier to meet people, it can also connect you with unstable strangers at the swipe of a finger. When I did eventually download the dating app again, I proceeded with far more caution and discernment than before. No more blindly trusting a carefully curated online persona. I vetted each match thoroughly now, on guard for any whiff of Chad-like warning signs. A few tolerable dates emerged from my more meticulous swiping, but none came close to the same level of shock and awe as the crying guy. That evening remains forever seared in my mind as the most cringeworthy first date possible. So for any others embarking on online dating adventures, don't let the convenience make you complacent. Stay alert for red flags to avoid your own awkward dating app horror story. When I first swiped right on Ryan's Tinder profile, I thought I'd hit the dating jackpot. His pictures showed a handsome guy around my age, with tousled brown hair, bright blue eyes, and an easy smile that exuded warmth. In one photo, he was hiking along a mountain ridge, the epic vista stretching out behind him. Another showed him sitting on a porch, strumming an acoustic guitar. His bio painted an intriguing picture. Ryan was a singer-songwriter and outdoor enthusiast who had recently moved to my city to pursue his music. He loved exploring new trails, camping under the stars, and playing gigs at cozy corner cafes. I was drawn to his creativity and adventurous spirit. As a fellow nature lover, I got excited imagining us hiking to a remote waterfall or stargazing on a secluded beach. When Ryan messaged me, I was impressed by his thoughtful comments about my photos and bio. He seemed genuinely interested in learning more about me as a person. We discovered we shared favorite bands, books, and travel experiences. Ryan had a playful sense of humor that came through in his messages, making me laugh out loud. After a week or so of lively messaging, we met up at a local brewery for our first date. In person, Ryan was even more charming. As we sipped craft beers, he told me about his passion for music and his dream of one day producing albums for indie artists. Under the bar's string lights, his eyes danced with enthusiasm as he described upcoming gigs, funny bandmates, and late nights working on new songs. I found myself captivated both by Ryan's passion and by his attentiveness as a date. He asked me lots of questions, listened intently, and touched my arm lightly when I said something that delighted him. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt such an instant connection and genuine interest from someone. In the weeks that followed, Ryan planned a series of creative, active dates that suited our mutual interests perfectly. We went on a long bike ride through the city, ending with an impromptu picnic in a park. He took me on a hike to an overlook with stunning valley views. At a beach bonfire, we stayed talking and roasting marshmallows late into the night. Regan also introduced me to his favorite local spots: a cozy coffee house, a hole-in-the-wall Raymond bar, an indie bookstore tucked away on a side street. With him as my guide, I felt like I was seeing sides of the city I never knew existed. On weekends, we'd go to shows at small music venues, swaying along to Ryan's musician friends. Everything just felt easy and fun with him in a way I hadn't experienced before. About 2 months in, I asked Ryan might get to see his place. He awkwardly explained he was still bunking with a friend while waiting for work on his apartment to finish. This should have raised some red flags, but I brushed it off. I was having such a great time with Ryan, I didn't want to prod or potentially start conflict. Little by little, Ryan started leaving things at my apartment: a guitar, a vinyl collection, extra clothes. He sweetly gave me a key to his place for when it's ready. By month 3, he was essentially living with me full time. My roommates teased me about our whirlwind romance, but I just felt lucky to have found someone so caring and incompatible. One afternoon when Ryan was out, I borrowed his laptop to look something up. When I opened it, a notification popped up from a sugar daddy dating website. My heart dropped into my stomach. I clicked on the message. Ryan had written to a girl named Stella, asking if she wanted to meet up that night. Scrolling through his inbox, I saw dozens of messages to various beautiful young women over the past few months. It became sickeningly clear Ryan had profiles on multiple sugar baby sites. He'd tell these women he was an up-and-coming musician who needed funds for equipment and producing demos. In exchange, he offered intimate dates and nights together. I felt so disgusted and betrayed. This whole relationship was built on lies. Ryan wasn't devoted to me. He was scamming me for housing while promising the same to multiple girls. All his talk about family values now sounded so phony. When Ryan got home, I immediately confronted him with printouts of his messages. He pathetically tried to defend himself, saying he needed the money to support his artistic dreams. I told him to get his stuff and get out of my apartment instantly. Of course, Ryan didn't want to leave. He begged me to reconsider, insisting we had something special and he cared about me. After an hour of his excuses, I called some friends to help forcibly remove him from the premises. I didn't want to waste another second with this liar. In the following weeks, I tried to heal and move on. But Ryan kept sending me messages pleading for another chance. He apologized profusely and claimed he'd made a huge mistake. After 2 months of silence, I finally relented and agreed to meet up to discuss things when I got back into town. The day my trip ended, I texted Ryan I'd be coming home a day early. Suddenly, he stopped responding altogether. I didn't think much of it initially. When I arrived home, I walked into a shocking scene. Garbage was piled up, dishes were molding in the sink, and scum coated the shower. The bedroom looked like it had been ransacked. Then I saw Ryan's guitar case leaning against the couch. My blood ran cold. I went to the leasing office and discovered Ryan had broken into my apartment nearly a week ago, claiming to be house-sitting while I was away. He proceeded to make himself at home again, inviting over friends and disrespecting my space entirely. The next morning, I had the locks changed and figured out how Ryan had made copies of my keys. I bagged up his stuff vindictively and left everything in the apartment complex dumpsters. I texted him it was all there if he wanted to dig it out. Ryan had the nerve to complain about me throwing out his things so carelessly, but I didn't owe him any courtesy or care after the havoc he wreaked on my life. I blocked his number, finally able to close the door on this traumatic chapter. My only regret was not trusting my gut sooner about Ryan's too-good-to-be-true act. It was a chilly fall night when I pulled up to Stacy's fancy downtown high-rise. We had matched on Swiprite a few weeks back and hit it off chatting online. Stacy was cute, sarcastic, and seemed normal enough. When she suggested I come over for a drink instead of going out to a bar, I hesitated at first. I barely knew this girl, and now she wanted me to come to her apartment late at night, just the two of us. But she assured me her roommates would be gone and lived in one of those secure buildings where you had to be buzzed up. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Walking up to her building, I admired the gleaming marble lobby and uniformed doorman. Nice place, I muttered under my breath, feeling awkward and underdressed. The doorman called up to Stacy's unit to confirm she was expecting me before letting me through. Her apartment was on one of the top floors with an amazing panoramic view of the city skyline. This definitely didn't look like the home of someone who would lure hapless Tinder matches here to murder them. I laughed at my own paranoia as she buzzed me in. When Stacy opened the door, I was taken aback for a moment. She looked noticeably different than in her casual dating app photos. She wore a slinky dress, sky-high heels, and had her hair and makeup fully done up. It seemed like a lot of preparation just for a quick drink with someone she'd never met before. I suddenly felt self-conscious, acutely aware of my faded band gear and sneakers. We sat down on her plush white sectional with our drinks. An awkward silence descended as I racked my brain trying to make conversation. Stacy seemed distracted, staring off into the distance out the floor-to-ceiling windows. She gave mostly one-word answers to my questions. I started wondering if this was a bad idea. Maybe she wasn't very interested in me and now felt obligated to hang out. Just as I was debating how to politely end this failed meetup, Stacy spoke up. "Can I ask you something?" I nodded, relieved she was finally engaging. "Why did you agree to come here tonight?" I was caught off guard. I made some corny joke about the great views from her apartment being hard to turn down. Stacy remained stone-faced. But seriously, you came over to a stranger's apartment late on a weekend night. Aren't you nervous something bad could happen? Her intense stare made me shift uncomfortably. I stammered that having security in the building made me feel safer, and I figured she wouldn't invite me here as she was dangerous. Stacy considered this for a moment before replying. Well, since you're here already, let me show you something. Before I could process her cryptic response, she casually slipped a hand between the sofa cushions. My muscles tensed up instinctively until she slowly revealed what she had grabbed, a large kitchen knife. Seeing the sharp blade glinting just inches from my leg made my breath catch in my throat. I froze. Stacy closely watched my reaction as she turned the knife over in her hands. I started keeping this here in case I ever needed to protect myself with a man over, she explained calmly. Too calmly. I felt my pulse accelerating, unsure what she was implying. Did she often have to fend off men who tried to attack her here? Stacy went on to point out several other weapons strategically stashed around the living room. Another vicious-looking knife concealed behind a framed photo on the wall, a hefty marble bookend placed suspiciously close to the couch that could easily bash someone's skull in. My mind raced trying to plan an escape route as she came at me with one of these weapons. Were they even for self-defense? Or was I her intended target all along? I frantically regretted dismissing my earlier hesitations about coming here. No one knew where I was. If I tried to flee, would I make it to the door before she grabbed one of her knives? Sensing my panic, Stacy assured me the knives were strictly for her own protection. She said she hid them around any room she might be alone with a man in case he tried to get violent or aggressive. The cold realization dawned on me that this was likely her standard dating ritual, carefully preparing an arsenal just in case the seemingly normal guy she invited over turned out to be dangerous. I tried to appear calm and not freak her out more as I made an excuse to leave, but internally I was shaken. It unnerved me to think this petite woman felt the need to secretly arm herself in her own home before letting a virtual stranger come over. I hated that she expected the worst from me the second I walked in her door. Driving home, I shuddered replaying the glint of her knives in the low light, the tense way she watched me for any hint of aggression. I thought back to every date I casually invited women to my place without a second thought for my own safety. Stacy's reality of constantly bracing for an attack was foreign to me. With some distance, I understood Stacy's secret weapons stash as a rational response to the endless vulnerability women face meeting any new man. She had no way of knowing if I was dangerous or not. All she could do was try to prepare for the worst-case scenario. Her knives were a desperate act to reclaim some control and power if I did attempt to hurt her. I couldn't imagine living life so on guard, where even a date in your own home could turn into a crime scene. In the end, nothing bad transpired between me and Stacy. The knives stayed firmly hidden as we said polite goodbyes. But I haven't used a dating app since. Being in her armed fortress apartment showed me an unsettling new perspective I just can't shake. Those concealed weapons spoke volumes about the constant threat lurking behind the flirty banter and casual drinks of online dating from a woman's view. It was eye-opening, but perhaps some horrors encountered in the digital world are better left swept away. Since my bad breakup with my ex Mark 6 months ago, I'd thrown myself recklessly into online dating. Mark and I were together for over 2 years, and I was convinced he was the one. Our split had been messy and painful, leaving me shattered and searching for someone new to lift me out of my breakup fog. In my fragile post-breakup state, I became a bit addicted to swiping. I downloaded all the apps: Tinder, Bumble, OkCupid, Hinge, plenty to fish. At first, I was picky, immediately eliminating any guy whose profile contained a shirtless bathroom selfie or who looked older than his listed age. But as the nondescript first dates added up, my standards slipped lower and lower. After the umpteenth boring first meetup with some forgettable finance bro, I finally had a promising match in Alex. His opening line wasn't some cheesy pickup line or flirty remark about my looks. Instead, he sent an animated gif of one of the ghosts from Ghostbusters along with the message, "Who ya gonna call the next time you see a ghost?" I laughed out loud. We were off to a good start. Over the next few days, Alex and I messaged back and forth nonstop. He was flirtatious yet respectful, asking questions about my job, friends, and interests. I would up readily, Thrilled that a guy on these apps finally seemed thoughtful instead of focusing only on my looks or bombarding me with innuendos. After we extensively discuss our mutual love of horror films and other pop culture, Alex finally asked me out. There was a trendy new farm-to-table restaurant downtown he thought I'd like. I was ecstatic, immediately exchanging numbers with him and making firm plans for Saturday night. I spent the entire next day getting ready, practically obsessively. I got a blowout to tame my typically frizzy hair. I invested in a dressier outfit than my usual casual fare, wanting to look extra polished for my first date with a promising guy in forever. From the moment I arrived at the restaurant and Alex waved me over, it was clear he was just as sharp in person as his messages had been. He looked just like his photos, effortlessly attractive with kind eyes and a warm grin. Alex positioned himself as a true gentleman from the start. He pulled out my chair, helped me with my coat, and asked the server thoughtful questions about the menu and wine pairings. I practically swooned. It had been so long since a date had basic manners and put that much thought into things. Our conversation flowed easily once the wine kicked in. Alex actively listened with genuine interest when I rambled about my marketing job, my noisy upstairs neighbors, my college days. In turn, he regaled me with charming anecdotes about his work, travel adventures, family. I noted no major red flags, only green lights. In retrospect, I should have been more guarded when Alex probed deeper with increasingly specific questions about aspects of my personal life. He asked which neighborhood I lived in, what my typical weekend activities and hangouts were, where I shopped for groceries and did my laundry. I vaguely mentioned enjoying beaches when he asked about vacations, and he followed up by naming a few specific shore towns and asking my thoughts. I took Alex's curiosity as flattering interest in getting to really know me. When he directly asked about my income, a tiny voice in my head said it seemed oddly invasive, but I shrugged it off and gave a vague approximation. I was blinded by his thoughtful vibe, good looks, and our lively banter. As we wrapped dinner, Alex suggested heading to a cool underground speakeasy nearby for a nightcap. He led the way down a nondescript alley and willingly followed, buzzed on red wine and the prospect of extending our awesome date. Over artisanal cocktails in the dark, moody bar, Alex's probing questions became more frequent between bouts of playful conversation. As I became tipsier, I divulged too much private information without a second thought. I rambled about places I liked to vacation, my college and hometown, and more exact details about my career. Alex absorbed it all with a smile and an occasional flirtatious arm squeeze. Eventually noticing how drunk I was, Alex tactfully recommended we call it a night. As we rode home in the Uber, I slumped against him, the details of our bar chat already hazy. I clumsily excused myself to my room to change for bed. Somewhere in my drunken logic, I thought it seemed fine for Alex to stay over rather than heading home this late. I barely remembered giving him a blanket and pillow for the couch before passing out cold in my bed. The next morning, I was rudely jolted from my deep hangover slumber by the realization that Alex was gone without a trace and my apartment had been raided. My purse sat empty on the kitchen counter. He had taken my wallet, credit cards, cash. My laptop too was missing from my work bag. Panic adrenaline sobered me up fast. I realized my car keys were gone. I ran outside in my pajamas to see my car still parked out front with my driver Raj washing it in the driveway. Raj mentioned that earlier, Alex had come outside asking for my keys, claiming he wanted to surprise me by getting breakfast. Raj insisted on driving Alex instead, but was politely rebuffed. After that strange interaction, Raj kept washing my car while warily keeping an eye out for Alex to return. The chilling reality set in. This seemingly great, upright guy I'd welcomed into my home had played me, scamming me for all my valuables and disappearing. A thorough sweep of my apartment revealed more missing items. An antique candlestick, nice headphones, designer shoes. He had crept around while I was passed out, picking off anything that looked valuable. Even a signed baseball and some vintage vinyl records were gone from storage. I felt utterly disgusted with myself for being so reckless. In my post-breakup loneliness, I had suspended all logic and good judgment. All the red flags were there. But I was so determined to force a connection after so many bad dates. I projected an imaginary persona onto Alex. My rose-colored post-split goggles blinded me to the manipulation and deceit now painfully obvious in hindsight. I file a useless police report, knowing Alex had certainly falsified his identity on Tinder. I called my bank and credit card companies to report the theft and cancel the cards. Of course, by the time I logged into Tinder to track him down, he had deleted his account and phone number. Just like that, he was a ghost. I learned my lesson the hardest possible way. Love-bombing manipulation tactics work frighteningly well on the vulnerably broken-hearted. I gave a total stranger the full benefit of the doubt based on a few days of online messaging. In the future, I have to be more wary and keep those eager to connect blinders in check, as seductively appealing as they may be. But for now, I'm staying far away from dating apps. Here we go again. Another Saturday night staring at my phone, swiping left and right on Bumble like a robot. My friends convinced me to download this stupid app 6 months ago after my breakup with Rajesh. It will help you get over him and start dating again. They insisted. I was skeptical, but finally caved under the pressure. Now the only thing I've gained is a growing collection of bizarre, cringy conversations. Swipe left on Rohit and his shirtless gin selfie. Swipe left on Samir and his blurry group photo, where I can't even tell which one is him. The picking seems slim tonight. My finger is getting tired. I'm about to give up entirely when a new profile pops up. Jay, 28, cute dimpled smile, worn brown eyes behind glasses, snuggling a golden retriever puppy. Bio says he's a project manager who loves hiking and trying new restaurants. No shirtless pics or fish photos in sight. Could I actually have found a normal one? I proceed cautiously and swipe right. To my surprise, a match. Jay messages first, starting up friendly small talk, asking how my weekend is going. I tell him about my lazy Saturday of Netflix and takeout food. He asks what shows I've been watching lately, and we discover we're both obsessed with the same true crime podcast. The conversation flows easily, without any creepy comments or pushy requests to meet up immediately like most guys on here. Over the next few weeks, Ajay and I message back and forth every day. In the morning, he'll send me cute animal photos that he knows will make me smile. At night, he'll fill me in on the new beer he tried with friends or the latest drama at work. He actually listens when I vent about my high-stress job or dysfunctional family. I learned that he loves playing guitar and that his dog Zorro is his best friend. Soon, messaging with Ajay has become the bright spot in my day. He's genuine and down-to-earth, very different from the finance bros I usually attract. I finally begin to let my guard down and open up to him in a way I never have with anyone from a dating app before. For once, I'm not keeping this new guy at an arm's length or waiting for the other shoe to drop. I really start to believe this app worked in my favor. In December, Vijay asks if I'd like to meet up in person for dinner or a drink. After weeks of nonstop chatting, I happily agree. We make plans to meet that Saturday evening at a local gastropub. I spend the morning getting a blowout in Monty/PE, cripping like I'm going on a first date in high school again. I'm thrilled but nervous to finally see our connection is just as strong face to face. I arrive at the pub and immediately spot Jay waiting by the host's stand. He looks just like his photos. We hugged hello a little awkwardly. As we're seated, the conversation picks back up into our usual easy banter. We chat for hours about work, family, pop culture, even exchanging childhood stories. I find myself laughing harder with him than I have in months. After dinner, we continue talking outside while waiting for our Uber rides home. I keep thinking what a gentleman Jay is compared to most men I've met through dating apps. Attentive, modest, truly invested in getting to know me. As I'm about to hop in my Uber, Jay says he needs to tell me something. My stomach drops. Here comes the inevitable "you're really cool, but" speech. He explains that he actually has a serious girlfriend named Priya who lives in Mumbai. They've been together for 5 years, but have been long distance since she moved 7 months ago. I feel like I've been punched in the gut. This whole time, I thought we were building towards something real, but I was just a temporary fill-in for him while Priya was away. Jay goes on about how he didn't mean for this to happen, and he hates to lead me on, but he thinks I'm too good of a person not to tell me the truth, as if I'm supposed to be grateful he's throwing me this bone. I hold back angry tears, tell him to lose my number, and flee to my Uber before he can see me cry. I feel so foolish. Of course, this amazing connection was too good to be true. I knew I shouldn't have trusted someone from an app, but I let loneliness cloud my judgment, craving intimacy and companionship after my breakup. I gave to Jay parts of myself I swore I wouldn't again after Rajesh. He took my vulnerability and stomped all over it without a thought. I even installed Bumble the minute I got home. No more virtual matchmaking roulette for me. From now on, I'll stick to safer bets like friends of friends or colleagues instead of random men swiping on my profile. At least then I can vet them through people I trust first. It's been a few weeks now, but I'm still stinging. I keep replaying those perfect dates in my head, angry at myself for overlooking any red flags. My friends tell me I dodged a bullet. At least a Jay was honest instead of boasting. But that doesn't negate months of misleading me. I know the allure of dating apps seems strong when you're lonely, but take it from me and you're better off avoiding the jaded users and dishonest agenda. Otherwise, you'll end up wasting time on dead connections seeking casual validation, not real partnership. I learned that lesson the hard way. Bumble may promise you your soulmate, but what you'll really find are flings killing time until they settle down. Don't make my same mistake. Your match is still up there, just not swiping right from his couch. Here I go again, downloading yet another trendy dating app despite my better judgment. My friends are always telling me I need to get back out there after a relationship ends. If only they knew the true horrors I've endured from swiping right. But this new app called Swipe Right was supposed to be different, or so all the flashy ads promised. I spent way too much time carefully curating the perfect mix of flattering and natural photos. I even paid for a professional editing service to enhance them since first impressions are everything on these apps. For my bio, I included just enough intriguing details about myself to hopefully spark conversation without coming across as pretentious. Aspiring screenwriter and part-time dog walker. Let's grab coffee and debate which friend's character is the worst. In my experience, a bit of light humor helps cut through the initial awkwardness of online flirting. Once my profile was polished to perfection, it was time to start swiping. I tried not to be overly picky those first few days, giving more guys the benefit of the doubt than usual. Many of the profiles blurred together into a haze of gym selfies and corny jokes. But one profile caught my eye. His name was Matt, 27, a graphic designer. He was cute in a bookish way with bright blue eyes behind black framed glasses. His photos showed him culling a golden retriever, hiking through the mountains, and laughing with friends over drinks. He seemed down to earth and genuine, not like the cocky finance bros I normally encountered. Before I could overanalyze, I swiped right. To my pleasant surprise, we matched immediately. His first message popped up right away, asking about my cute dog walking pictures, the name of my pup Hurley. I smiled and responded that Hurley is a handful, but I love him. For the rest of the evening, Matt had messaged back and forth effortlessly. He told me all about his goofy rescue dog, how he recently got into bird watching, his quest to try every rim and spot in town. Our shared love of animals and the outdoors made me feel an instant connection. Over the next week, Matt and I texted daily. He was funny and charming, always sending me cute photos of his dog or cracking jokes about his coworkers. I looked forward to our conversations, which came so easy it felt like texting an old friend. When he finally asked me to meet up for a drink, I didn't hesitate to say yes. We planned to go to a low-key bar downtown that Saturday night. I spent all day Saturday obsessing over what to wear, practically trying on my whole closet. I didn't want to come across too dressed up, but I also wanted to look nice for him. I finally settled on an outfit, casual but flattering. When the Uber dropped me off, I immediately spotted Matt waiting outside. He looked just as cute as his pictures, if not better in person. We exchanged slightly awkward hugs before heading into the cozy, dimly lit bar. We grabbed a booth and the conversation flowed easily over craft beers. Matt told me animated stories about mishaps at work, his favorite hiking trails, his weird college roommate. I found myself laughing throughout and any first date nerves slipped away. I was actually enjoying myself, a rare feat for me in online dating. After an hour or so, Matt offered to get us another round. While he went up to the bar, I took the chance to slip into the restroom and check my hair and makeup. I reapplied my lipstick and smiled at my reflection, genuinely excited to get back to our date. When I returned to the booth, fresh drinks were waiting. Mine was an unusual teal color garnished with fruit. I took a grateful sip through the straw, but the taste was off, way sweeter than I expected, and oddly bitter. I wrinkled my nose a bit, but didn't want to seem rude by not drinking it. Maybe it was some fancy artisanal cocktail I just wasn't used to. We continued chatting, but gradually I started to feel strange. At first, I thought the strong drink was just hitting me harder than expected, but slowly an unsettling numbness spread through my limbs. My thoughts grew muddled, words slurring together on my clumsy tongue. I shook my head, trying in vain to clear the fog that kept thickening. Across from me, Matt's voice sounded warped and distant, his face blurring in my vision. Panic began rising in my chest as the room tilted and swayed around me. Something was very, very wrong here. I had to escape. Now. I tried to slide out of the booth, but my legs buckled under me, jelly-like and uncooperative. Matt reached for my arm, gesturing for me to stay. The bar was spinning violently as I stumbled toward the neon exit sign. Patrons stared as I bumped drunkenly into tables, fighting to remain upright. The cold night air revived me for a moment as I burst outside. I blinked hard and tried to get my bearings, wanting desperately to get away from Matt. But no cabs were around, and in my condition walking home seemed impossible. I fumbled for my phone to maybe call an Uber, but the screen was an incomprehensible blur. That's when I felt Matt's vice-like grip on my shoulder as he forcefully spun me around to face him. His eyes were wild now, his handsome face contorted in a twisted snarl. Fear shot through every fiber of my being. He started pulling me roughly down the street into an alley alongside the bar. I tried to plant my feet, but couldn't fight against his brute strength. We reached a secluded area littered with dumpsters and trash. Matt pushed me hard against the brick wall. As I slid down it onto the filthy concrete, his hands tore savagely at my clothing. I was trapped in my own body, unable to fight or flee. But as Matt leaned over me, by some miracle my foot connected with his knee in a weak kick. He yelped in pain as I scrambled desperately across the ground away from him. My hand closed around something solid, a broken piece of brick. With every last ounce of might, I swung it as Matt lunged toward me again. It connected with his temple with a sickening crack. He instantly dropped out cold. I lay there hyperventilating, clutching that brick like a lifeline. The screech of sirens barely penetrated my clouded awareness. As everything went black, I said a silent prayer of thanks. Flashes of light cut through the darkness. Hazy voices swirled around me. The sterile smell of chemicals burned my nose. Slowly, the fog lifted just enough for me to realize I was in a hospital. Confused faces came into focus above me. I slipped out of consciousness again. When I fully came to, cops were at my bedside, their badges glinting under the harsh fluorescent lights. In clipped tones, they explained what happened. The drink had been laced with a potent date rape drug. Matt was a calculating predator who stalked women online. Previous victims had come forward after seeing news of my assault. Thankfully, I had fought him off before he could do the unthinkable. In the sober light of day, I finally accepted the harsh truth. Matt was not some shy graphic designer, but a master manipulator cloaked behind a charming facade. His profile, his dog, his witty banter, all an elaborate lure designed to win my trust before destroying me. I'll never forget the day I first swiped right on Alex. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, and I was bored, casually scrolling through a dating app to pass the time. His profile caught my eye. Handsome, witty, successful. He seemed like a great catch. We matched immediately, and I felt that little rush of excitement that comes with connecting to a promising potential date. If only I had known then what I know now, I would have kept right on swiping. Our initial conversations were light and flirty. We exchanged banter about favorite foods, pop culture opinions, embarrassing childhood stories. Nothing too deep, but enough to pique interest on both sides. When he suggested meeting up for a drink, I enthusiastically agreed. We picked a trendy new bar downtown, and the conversation flowed as effortlessly in person as it did over text. Alex was charming and funny, asking thoughtful questions and commiserating over tales of dating app disasters. I found myself opening up, sharing more personal details than I normally would with a virtual stranger. But Alex had a way of putting me at ease, making me feel safe to bare pieces of myself. That should have been the first red flag. Moving too fast, letting my guard down, feeling so instantly comfortable with someone I just met. But I was too caught up in how dashing and attentive Alex seemed. How his eyes would light up when I talked. How he made me feel like the most captivating woman in the room. Walking to my car that night, I already knew I wanted to see him again. My instincts were muffled by the butterflies in my stomach, my desire overriding the quiet voice of caution. We planned a second date just a few days later, already falling into the rhythm of a couple. This time, Alex wanted to plan something special, dinner at a high-end restaurant downtown, followed by a show at a swanky jazz lounge. I spent an hour getting ready, giddy as a schoolgirl. When I opened my door to him standing there with flowers, I felt like I was starring in some romantic comedy. The date went perfectly, full of more effortless conversation, sprinkled with Alex's adoring gazes. He held doors for me, pulled out my chair, placed his hand soothingly on my lower back as we strolled along. It was the kind of courtship you think only exists in the movies. Over the next few weeks, we slipped easily into an exclusive relationship, spending every free moment together. During the day, Alex would text constantly, little observations about his morning, funny things he saw, reminding me how beautiful I was. At first it felt sweet, like he just couldn't get enough of me. But the messages became more frequent, almost compulsive. If I didn't reply immediately, he'd get insecure and sullen. Plans with friends were met with guilt trips about neglecting him. Any time apart meant hours of calls and texts until we were reunited. The grand gestures also took a creepy turn. Alex would show up unannounced with flowers or gifts, saying he just had to see me. At work, at yoga class, even waiting on my doorstep, he had a knack for tracking me down no matter where I was. If I didn't invite him inside or alter my plans for him, he'd spiral into days of moody passive aggression until I smoothed things over. His sole focus became consuming all my time and attention at any cost. Trying to gently set boundaries only seemed to fuel his obsession. When I asked for a little space, Alex barraged me with weepy late-night calls, lamenting that I must not care for him anymore. If I hesitated answering the phone, he'd leave dozens of pleading messages, certain I was ignoring him. He'd show up disheveled on my doorstep, insisting we talk through his abandonment issues right then and there. The harder I pulled away, the more frantically he tried to cling. I realized I needed to break things off completely when the uninvited visits escalated. I'd get home from work and Alex would already be inside my apartment, claiming he used the spare key for emergencies. If I went on a girls' night, he'd sabotage it by having dozens of roses delivered to me at the bar. The final straw was arriving back from a weekend trip to find him camped out in my living room, outraged that I'd gone away without telling him. This relationship had become an obsession fueled by entitlement and insecurity. I knew for my own safety I had to end it. Of course, Alex did not take this well. The barrage of calls and texts kicked into overdrive, vacillating between desperate and abusive. He'd show up demanding we talk, only to menacingly insist I was cheating and this wasn't over. Trying to go no contact only escalated his behavior to frightening levels. He slashed my tires, left disturbing packages on my doorstep, boldly broke into my apartment to leave traces that he'd been there while I was out. Friends had to accompany me everywhere until I was able to move without them finding my new address. It took a restraining order, changed phone numbers, switched jobs, and relentless hypervigilance before I finally stopped feeling Alex lurking over my shoulder. But the damage was done. My relationships and ability to trust were fractured. I still compulsively check the locks at night, scan for familiar faces everywhere I go. While not all dating app matches end so traumatically, my experience was a jolting reminder to follow my instincts, no matter how swept up in romance I may feel. Charm is not the same as character. Real connection takes time. And if something seems too good to be true, it very likely is. My story is a cautionary tale. Swipe right with care, but swipe left the moment those red flags appear. Your safety and peace of mind depend on it.
Thanks for listening in. If you like these stories and want to hear more, then please subscribe and like and support this new channel. We have more stories for you to listen to.